I say thank you to President Fite. Before we begin the pledge, I just want to thank all of the Board of Governors members and all the other attendees, whether you're here in person or live stream, welcome to Athens. But thank you for the incredibly valuable time that you give to this amazing organization. I recognize it's a personal sacrifice of your time. It's a financial commitment. And thank you very much from all of us here in Athens. With that, we'll face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, President Fite.
And now to lead us in the invocation will be our Chinny Law, and she will be participating virtually.
Good morning, colleagues. It is my pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Chinny Law, and I serve on the board as a member at large. The best way to describe my faith is to quote Abraham Lincoln. When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That is my religion. As we complete the work of the bar this morning, let us bow our heads and offer this prayer. Creator of the universe, thank you for this opportunity for fellowship and service. Help us do good so that we may feel good. Help us fulfill our obligations to our colleagues, our profession, and our community. Help us uphold the lawyer's creed. Help us debate with kindness, compassion, and humanity. Help us face challenges with courage and bravery. Help us make decisions that are just, rational, and pragmatic. Empower our use of discretion today as we pursue justice. Unite us this morning so that we may govern in power and in peace. Amen.
Thank you for that. All right, now on to recognition of special guests. I'm really excited. We've got a lot of folks here today, so bear with me. From the Supreme Court, we have Chief Justice David Namias, Justice Nels Peterson, Justice Sarah Warren, Justice John Ellington, Justice Carla Wong McMillan, and Justice Verda M. Colvin. From the Court of Appeals, we have Judge Clyde Reese, Judge Ken Hodges, and Judge Andrew Pinson. Past presidents of the State Bar, Bill Barwick, Robin Fraser Clark, Hal Daniel, Jim Elliott, also Judge Ken Hodges, Don Jones, Linda Klein is participating virtually, George Mundy, Patrice Perkins Hooker, Buck Rogers, John Salmon, Daryl Sutton, and Lester Tate. Thank you all for coming and joining us. Also over cocktails, excuse me, last night, I learned that we have another special guest that's here with us. His name is Trip Vaughn. It's Thomas. He's a guest of Thomas Herman's to the meeting. He has been accepted to UGA Law and will be starting in the fall. So in about 3 years' time, I expect he'll be calling all of y'all to ask for a job. So Trip, if you could please just stand up and raise your hand. Welcome. The grandson of Erwin Stolt. Now with that, Ivy Cadle will lead us in the roll call.
Good morning. While we have a fancy clicker option for voting, we still rely on paper around here for attendance. So I will be passing out the roll. There are 5 of them. If you would kindly, when you're done, pass them back towards the front here so that we make sure they all get collected. If you would also make sure you check your board book and make sure that your attendance is adequately reflected. We pass out 5 different pieces of paper with at least 5 different pieces of paper among them. So compiling this information may or may not have a few human errors in there. So we depend on you to check. And with that, I'll pass the roll out. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email me.
Nice work, Ivy. Thank you. I'd like to direct your attention to the future meeting schedule on pages 9 to 10 of the board book. I believe one of the contracts still shows it's pending to do. The one for the mid-year meeting in January is actually final. So just to let y'all know, we've got one more contract pending, but that is just in the normal course of things. So please get those on your calendar. And I'm sure that Sally will enjoy presiding over all of those meetings, and I will enjoy sitting, taking a break. When Ivy then gets a chance to come back, he gets to do the minutes for the 290th Board of Governors meeting. Okay. So we need to take a minute. There's.
So there's a delay with these.
There's a delay.
It's not.
We've got some people that are still trying to log into the Turning Point software, so we're going to take 1 second while we get people caught up. This is a good vote to practice on anyway. Because it's always correct. Okay. I'm about to.
I don't think they qualify. Now I go to sign.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, then you're fine. Because they have it. Did y'all send the resignation?
Yeah. It's like 14. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we're still working through some technical logistics. So what we're going to do is move forward in the agenda on things that don't require votes because we're all about being efficient. So I'm going to have Damon Elmore is going to give his executive director's report.
Good morning. Just a quick update on what we have here. I know that Jennifer and Michael are working on it. I know some of the challenges that at least particularly some of the people online are seeing and maybe even here is that it's requiring passwords and may have to recover passwords, but we'll get some solutions for you here in a moment and be able to rock and roll and move forward. But in the meantime, as it relates to my report, I wanted to say good morning to our Chief Justice, to the other members of the Supreme Court with us, our members of the Board of Governors, new friends. I will keep saying it. I appreciate this opportunity to come before you with remarks and an update on our bar operations. This time, I'll be a bit more focused and provide a specific update on 5-6 matters that are either top of mind and priorities for us, or those that we have provided an update on in previous updates, and this is a follow-up, or are the issues that appear to be important to you and serve as the base for many of the questions that we receive one-on-one, like at dinner last night. Then I'll share additional detail on our work related to increasing our tenancy at 104 Marietta Street, as that is important to you too. Naturally, all of our work is with the aim of improving the quality of legal services and guiding the regulation of the practice. Let me talk about some meetings and events first. The building is still buzzing. You'll remember that we opened the building to more activities with the start of the bar year in July, and that hasn't changed. Our teams were on site on a more frequent basis. The conference center hosted events, large and small, programs and individual meetings. Some of those, you can imagine, were adjusted or modified in December and January, but since then we've continued to see an increase in activities with ICLE programming, events with our YLD like the Leadership Academy, section leadership events or events hosted by our friends with the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism, GACTL, and similar organizations. As in-person events are selected as the preferred course by the host or sponsor, we've been seeing that quantity and activity increase, and we'll be ready for them at our conference center. Our team is flexible in the scheduling and continues to find solutions for hosting those meetings, usually with technology or unique ways to provide a satisfying meeting experience. Talk about our staff, our team for a second. We still get the question about our staff and whether they are back in the building. We've moved in that direction with clarity in July. Some plans also were paused in late December and January, and select events or staff meetings have a virtual component. We've also afforded some flexibility with a mix of remote work options, but our teams are back and they have been back. And the expectations are high quality, high caliber member value and service. That's paramount. I feel they are delivering. And over the last 2 calendar quarters, we've had as many as 18 openings. Now we only have about 4 roles that are open, and most of those are previously approved positions that we've just been deliberate in filling and hiring. You know, you've seen that many of our recent staffing changes are working out better than we even predicted. And we're confident that we will expect only better from them as our rhythms jibe and the dams upstream open a little bit. But if you have concerns, let me know. You're also welcome to use that same number with compliments. Talk about ICLE for a second, because 6 out of 10 of the questions about our work are usually connected to ICLE programming. I will tell you the news is encouraging there as well. It's safe to say that that was the biggest department impacted the most as a result of changes in 2020 and 2021. But in December, January, February, and March, we saw a steady and increased level of programming over fiscal year 21, and our plans for April, May, and June will see a similar pattern. With the time that we've had, we've managed some expenses and worked with a streamlined staff and have given our attention to other processes. Those things have helped. It's also been a period of introspection for us, where we are still evaluating, including recently as yesterday,
with a really good discussion with our ICLE board about what opportunity we have with that department as legal education delivery has changed and the ways that the department can change, how member value can change or improve. So matters of pricing are top of mind, or the impact of members selecting video or web services, chiefly for convenience, and how that impacts our planning. Or more important than that, some secondary tangible benefits like the camaraderie or professional interaction or creating a space to prioritize civility, which are all intangibles that are still important with ICLE programming. But now that our March Madness period has ended, look for more concrete change to be reported from that department and some real exciting stories. A quick update on our coastal Georgia office. As we shared with you in January, we're moving forward with finding new space to support our members, their clients, and the public for our coastal Georgia office. I appreciate all of the suggestions and feedback that you've provided, but people like John Pinnell and Paul Painter have been helpful, and all of the other feedback has been invaluable in our processes so far. We have a good broker working with us and supporting that process. Since January, we've visited nearly 10 sites. I've been able to get to 4 of them personally. Our office manager, Kendall Harville, is providing amazing support in that area, being on the ground there. We've had a chance to evaluate what would work for us, what has proved unnecessary, generally in the area of some extra space that we probably didn't need. And then also what additional needs we have that can satisfy us and give us an opportunity, mainly parking and technology. We're in the process now where we've requested proposals from potential sites. And once we receive responses in other detail, we will work with the executive committee. Sally has been really integral in the process all along and her insight, and with you to make the right selection. In the meantime, this is another one where if you have any questions, you know where you can find me. So let me talk about 104 Marietta Street. And this discussion will be a little less prepared remarks and really more like just a stream of ideas and thoughts or notes that we have on the work that we're doing to try to get more people in that building. You've heard me say that this is a top priority, and that has not changed. So here's what we're talking about. By some descriptions, we have nearly 30,000 rentable square feet in the building. If you ask me, we have a bit more. We have 40,000 on that 5th floor alone, which we have avoided due to the rehabilitation costs that would be necessary. But I feel that maybe we'll find a right partner who wants to bear that burden with us or come up with some other creative solutions. So it is still an option to figure out what might be able to happen there. We also have space in our basements and our sub-basements, and we've explored some really unique and creative possibilities there for things that don't require necessarily an office space, but can still be utilized and help support the operation of the building. And we won't ignore any of those creative solutions, as we know that revenue in that part of, or that side of the house is important to supplement and provide some relief in our operations and support the building itself. Here's what we've done to try to move forward with that work. We have a small internal task force. We've collaborated with Cushman, not only as our building manager, but on their brokerage services side. We've gotten creative to try to work with partners like the old Regis or WeWork or Industrious, and no one has really had a bite on that. We've evaluated ideas with a small amount of space for a hoteling concept for lawyers. We have some clarity on what it would cost to put us in a position to make that a reality. And there is some support and excitement about that. So we're still moving forward with determining how that might help. I have an extra job, Ron and Steve and Rebecca and I, as we evaluate the list of people who have leases that are expiring in the next year or two, and determining if we have contacts with them, what their needs might be. We've run special operation missions to determine what the competitive landscape is in the area, whether we're pricing ourselves correctly or what it is that we would need to do in order to make the opportunity to be a neighbor of ours a reality. So we're doing a lot of groundwork that way. I'll tell you, we're excited about a couple of things. We have secured a new longer-term lease with our friends at the Georgia Legal Services Program. And I want to thank Rick and people like Tamika for their support on that initiative right there. That Centennial Yards project is moving forward. And if you're in the metro Atlanta area, you may be more familiar with it, but the space that surrounds the State Farm Arena and the stadium, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, is under development, and they are moving forward with parts of the project that are working back in. That will be a huge deal for the downtown submarket, that market that comes south of North Avenue. And so we know the people who are actually developing that project. We've had them in our space a couple of times. They want to be our neighbor, and we're hoping that the things that they do will positively benefit us. The challenge is, though, that's a long-term project. That's a 5 to 10 year project to see it all come together. But in the meantime, we will work with them. We will wait, and we will see what might be available there. So that's an option. Of course, you know the challenges. The commercial real estate market still remains unclear. The downtown submarket is even cooler than that, if you want to describe it that way. Everyone wants to go to Midtown or Buckhead or in other spaces outside of the precise downtown area. There have been lots of changes. Buildings have been sold, new investors are involved, so there's a lot of movement in the market. Our brokerage partner has been helpful, but our space is probably not as much a priority on their list as others are. So we'll continue to figure out how to navigate through those challenges, and we'll continue to provide good updates as we move forward there. That's all I have. I hope you never hesitate to contact me and let me know how we can do better or help your work. In the meantime, thank you. Thank you as always for allowing me an opportunity to continue to serve in this capacity. I love Georgia lawyers, and I love the work that I get to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamin. We are still adjusting some things here. I believe they're going to shut down the current session and restart it. So we're just going to keep moving on our informational reports. So Mr. Del Campo.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone that's here in beautiful Athens, Georgia. And to those of you who are participating remotely, welcome to this meeting. Again, the state of our finances, the State Bar of Georgia's finances are sound. We continue to do well with the budget and stay within the budget. Ron and our entire staff is doing just a wonderful job in keeping us there. The report, the finance report, is contained in your book at page 23, and it goes through page 36. And therein you will find all the different variances. In other words, those items that we've gone above or below the budget. You've heard about many of these in prior meetings. Probably the most significant, and this was touched on before by Damon, is the Georgia Legal Services. We actually did sign the lease, and Georgia Legal Services will start that tenancy on July 1st, 2022, and that's a 5-year lease. You'll also see at the bottom that we have a positive variance. In other words, the allocated expenses, the shared allocated office expenses, have actually been lower than what's been allocated. So we have a positive variance there of over $37,000, and that's a good thing. So that is my report. If you have any questions, let me know. Ron is here if I can't handle the question. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the Young Lawyers Division report by Alyssa Haynes.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to be very quick, like I normally am with these things, but I want to start by saying 2 weeks ago, we had our Leadership Academy session and our sole YLD meeting in Chattanooga, which was fantastic. The theme was networking across state lines. We had a joint networking reception with the Tennessee Young Lawyers Division, which was great. We also had a CLE on eSports, which was a little different from what we normally do. So we had a great time for that. But more importantly, we had a service project with the Chattanooga Room at the Inn, which is a residential program for homeless women and children. We painted, we sanded railings, we did it all, and we had a really, really good time. Next weekend, the Leadership Academy is headed to Dahlonega, where the theme is going to be serving your community, self-care, wellness, and decompressing. And on that note, I have made it a point in my presidency this year, which is about to come to an end, to focus on mental health and wellness, especially for young lawyers, but especially for leaders too, leaders in our bar, all of us. People routinely tell me, well, you knew what you were getting into when you signed up for this. That is true. I did know that I was going to be president of the Young Lawyers Division, but it's hard. What we do is not easy. We all have jobs. We all have lives outside of work and outside of the bar. And so, juggling it all is difficult. So I really did try to focus on that. And we're hoping to bring a podcast to the YLD where we'll have some speakers about it. And hopefully that takes off. May 6th to 7th, we have our 11th Circuit Judicial Conference, where the YLD will be hosting a networking reception on the Friday evening, as well as a breakfast with our federal judges. And then lastly, and most importantly, if you do anything after I speak today, I hope it is to donate to our signature fundraiser. Our signature fundraiser is going to be April 30th at 433 Bishop in Atlanta from 7 to 11. We have extended the time to sponsor through the weekend. I know there's already some sponsors in this room. John Pinnell, thank you for your firm for sponsoring it. Really appreciate that. So far, we have secured about $20,000 in sponsorships, and I would love to increase that because I think our costs are around 15. So anything over and above that goes directly to Kate's Club. I'm sure you've heard me speak about this before, but Kate's Club is an organization that helps children and teenagers who lost a parent, spouse, or caregiver. I lost my dad when I was 13, so it's an organization that's very special to me. So please go to the YLD's website. You can click, you can donate, you can sponsor, or just buy tickets. We hope to see all of you there. It's going to be a laid back, casual theme. It's not going to be like your traditional signature fundraiser where you wear a black tie and get all jazzed up. Think college band party, come in jeans. We're going to have a band. We're going to have a photo booth camper. It's going to be a really good time. So again, April 30th, please go to the YLD website and donate, and we really appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right, moving on. So my understanding is that perhaps whatever boxes needed to be checked or unchecked on the Turning Point software have had that happen. So I encourage you all, what we're going to do is I'm going to go over the investment policy statement, proposed changes, and I'm going to give my president's report, and then we're going to go back and start trying to vote again. So this can give you time to log in and make sure that you're good. So you ought to be able, even if you don't have an account now and you're using the software, you ought to be able to go in, click guest, enter the passcode for this meeting, and then all you have to do is enter your name, your first and last name, and email, and that's for verification purposes. So you shouldn't have to create an account now. And if you're seeing the message waiting for the presenter, you've done it. You've gotten exactly where you need to be. So don't give up hope. All right, moving on to the investment policy statement proposed changes. That's on pages 42 to 51 of your board book. This is for information only right now. We will vote on this during the annual meeting, but what you've got in the board book is a red line copy of our proposed changes and the highest high level. And if you have any other questions and would like to ask them, I'm going to totally punt to Ron Turner or Damon on that. But we've gone from the proposed changes would be going from a super strict, very, very, very conservative investment policy to one very conservative policy. So two varies, it's going to one vary. But again, we're not voting on that. So you've got time to look at it. If you've got any questions, this originated from the investment committee, but you can always talk to Ron or Damon if you have any questions. President's report. It's kind of fun to hit that before the 9:30 mark or 9:45 mark. We have been rocking and rolling this year. We have been, adjusting and adapting like everybody else. We've had virtual, EC's been meeting, probably every other meeting's been virtual, but then we try to go out into the community. So we've had a meeting recently in Tifton. It was important for me to get to every location that we have a state bar office. So we were in Tifton and we had a great time and really enjoyed seeing folks there. And the one thing that I'm always so happy about and want us to always remember is that, people are always excited when we come into their communities. They can tell us about where they live, where they're from, what they're doing. We can meet people. We've given a lot of ourselves to the state bar over the years, but there are other people that give to the profession in other ways, and going into their community is a way that you can actually connect with them and talk to them and have shared experiences. So, and that's why having a meeting like this in Athens, I can't recall the last time we were out here, but it's just been so good. It's also been homecoming for a lot of y'all. It seems like people celebrating their old haunts or telling us where their old haunts used to be. So I just want to always encourage us to reach out, and we do try to, get out of Atlanta when we can, but also we now know that people do like virtual meetings sometimes. They complain, but they are very easy to, get a committee meeting in really quickly. And then that way you don't have to drive to wherever and you can be in the comfort of your own office. And so, as we move forward with the bar, I think we all just need to think about meetings like this. It's great that we can show up. We need to show up for these. I think the in-person component is so important. But I can also see going forward too, that certain committees may never meet in person again, because it just is just so much more convenient, and it allows greater participation across the state too. And just like Alyssa, I've really been struck this year by a lot of the mental wellness, the mental wellness pandemic that we've seen. We have lost, I never want to do that. We've lost a lot of lawyers, and we've lost a lot of lawyers that thought it would be easier for them to not be here than to just try to address that issue for one more day. And in this role, you don't, I've said this before in my article about the succession planning too. That's just the one thing I wasn't prepared for. I was prepared for so much. I can run a meeting and I can talk to you about dues all day if you want to. But I just want to take a moment here to encourage these people in this room and those who are participating virtually. Take a moment and think about how you can connect with others. Everyone doesn't have to share their story. Everyone doesn't have to say, this is all that I've gone through and this is what I've done. But you never know when that moment where you take a moment and just say, hey, are you good? Do you want to get coffee? How's it going? Can I check in with you? That can be the moment somebody needs. And, we have a suicide prevention and awareness committee, and we have a wellness committee that's very robust. But the one thing I'm assured of too is it can't all rest on their shoulders. That's a lot of work too. Judge Morris gets calls and fields them where she is trying to save people's lives in that moment. And God bless her for doing it. But it's not just her responsibility. So with that, I just want everyone here to just think about how you can connect in your community, in your office, and how you can reach out to people. You don't have to come up with that plan today, but I just want you to be mindful of it. And sometimes, and this could be a dangerous thing to say in this room, and sometimes if the answer is you don't have to be a lawyer anymore, or you don't have to work as a lawyer anymore, that's an okay answer too for some people, because I'd rather be here and not practice than not be here at all. So it's just been weighing on my heart. I guess I thought I would cry at the end of the meeting, but instead it's before we vote on things. So I just strongly encourage, you just never know. And we're hearing moments where people saw somebody on Facebook and thought, this is just, whatever they're saying doesn't register. It doesn't feel like the person I know, and they've reached out to that person. So I'm not asking you all to go on a crusade, just in your own way, in the way in which you're comfortable and you're safe in your space to do that. On to wildly more mundane things. Elections are open for the State Bar of Georgia, and they're open electronically, and you can cast your ballot until April the 22nd. And so I just encourage you to do that. If it has to be electronic, if you would like to have a paper ballot, you actually have to request that. So please tell your people, get people to vote. Sally and I don't have to appear on a ballot anymore, so we're good. Do what you want, but just go vote. And also along those lines, don't forget that May 24th is an election for our state. And in your area, it's the nonpartisan race for judges. We've got some friends here who are seeing some challengers, and there's some new people that are trying to challenge. And I just encourage you all to also talk to people in your community. As a lawyer, as a leader, people are going to look to you about who to vote for in those elections. And so we want to get people out there to vote. So just please remember to do that. So with that, I think maybe our Turning Point software might be working, and I'm going to try to hop back into the minutes. Oh, so we've done a test slide and we're going to vote on something amazing to practice so that we're good. Okay. Do you want to vote on that now? Okay. I think we're going to vote on our favorite color.
Athens 22 exclamation point.
Athens 22 exclamation.
Athens 22 exclamation.
It's SBGA admin is the network, and then Athens, it's down in the corner of the screen.
Yeah.
All right, so if you're looking at your Turning Point software, you should see the slide that's on the screen. It says polling, and now we're going to vote on our favorite color. Limited options. Okay. So now cast your vote. We'll leave it open like we did last time in the fall. We'll leave it open and then we'll signal when we're closing the poll. Right. I'm just looking at the room. Everyone feel like they've mastered the art of this for now. All right, we're gonna close it and find out the most important topic of the day. Oh, yes. There you go. All right, software works. Ivy, now's the time to shine.
Yeah, I think I can do this. If I don't trip on this podium, it's going to be a miracle. Does anybody have any changes to the minutes? Hearing no changes to the minutes? I will say I had a message from somebody in the back who hasn't gotten the roll. So I'm going to take the roll pages to the back. And if you haven't gotten the roll, raise your hand. So you have depictions over here. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so having no changes to the minutes, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? I hear a motion and I have a second. All right, so they're going to post up the slide, the polling question. We're going to vote on the minutes. We're going to give it just a few seconds to allow everybody to get in. And also as a reminder, for those of you who are online, Ivy's talked a lot about paper today. You're being counted present by your virtual attendance by Zoom. Y'all are valuable to us too. All right, you ready to close the poll? Oh, you can tell me, okay. You can tell me how many people voted, right? Okay. Okay. You tell me when we have critical mass. That feels good. All right, we're going to close the poll. All right, we're closing it now. There you go. Jack Long for the no, I do not approve. I can guarantee you that. It does work, everyone. The no's work. Minutes are approved. All right, moving on to another casual topic, dues for 22-23. Elena, if you'll come up here too. So Elena Kaplan is a dear friend and also the chair of the finance committee and volunteered to drive up here today to help talk to you all about this too, just in case. So if you look in your board book, you'll see that the recommendation of the executive committee is to have active dues at the amount of $260 and inactive dues at $130. Just so you all know, that is a $6 dues increase. We're currently at $254 for active dues. In the board book on page 17, that's where you will see the assumptions used for the budget assumptions. Some of the ones I want to highlight, and then Elena is going to talk to you just about the finance committee's thoughts and processes. Assumption 1, again, that's the dues at 160. Assumption 4 is essentially a salary increase is included in next year's budget at the rate of up to 5%. And then budget assumption number 7 related to the leased space. And you've heard that discussed too. We've got some available space there. So with that, Elena, I'll let you present some of your thoughts on the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everybody. As Elizabeth mentioned, I chair the Finance Committee, and I thought it might make sense because this is kind of a larger dues increase than we've seen in a long time, to walk through what the Finance Committee walked through as a baseline for your discussions about the dues. So you'll see on page 16, there's a whole process that goes around the recommendations or setting the dues, and then a process around setting the budget. And in some ways, it's kind of a backwards process because we set the dues before we do the budget, but you kind of need to know what the budget is so that you can figure out what the dues is. So it's this kind of tension back and forth. It starts out with the Ron, the CFO, and bar staff working together to figure out what costs are going to be, what contracts they have, and what those are going to be, and setting that into a draft budget. And then there are 2 committees that meet, one to talk about personnel and one to talk about programs. And those committees, they don't make recommendations to finance. Finance receives what their recommendation is holistically. And then all of that goes up to executive committee. So you'll see on page 16, there's kind of the summary of that process. When the Finance Committee met to talk about the dues recommendation, we had a variety of data points that we looked at. One of it was what programs did, and what programs did really had a negligible impact. I think it was a few $1,000s. So that was not a mover on what was going to happen with the dues. The second thing we had was what the Personnel Committee had looked at. And Elizabeth noted that in the budget assumptions that there was the Personnel Committee recommended that there be a salary increase of up to 5% for just sort of general salary increase for bar staff, and that there hadn't been a salary increase for a couple of years during the pandemic. In addition, there was one new position that was created. And so those personnel recommendations had a total impact of $500,000. So it was a sizable impact on the budget. So that was one of the big drivers. The rest of the budget had some things adjusted within it that maybe moved the needle a little bit. And we were coming in there realizing that if you just took all of the increases in cost in the budget and you decided that was what you were going to base the dues increase on, using the same way we do when we do like a new program, it would be a $10 dues impact. So that was kind of one end of where we were looking at, was a $10 dues impact, which is kind of high compared to what we've normally looked at. The other things that we looked at was the revenue, where the revenue was coming from and what the anticipated revenue would be. So bar dues, the revenue is based on the dues amount, but it's also based on the number of members, and the number of members has been increasing every year, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for a variety of reasons, but it helps our fiscal situation because that's more people paying in to just the basic costs. There are 2 other revenue generators, as you know, that are, it's not that they're not reliable, it's just that we know what bar dues are, and people have to pay the bar dues to be a member and to practice law. One of the other 2 is the rent, what the building throws off, and that has always been a positive. As was mentioned, there have been some changes in the rent that we've been receiving over the past few years. And so there's been a decrease in the positive that the bar center has been throwing off that we've been using to supplement our operating expenses and to build up a big reserve fund. And so that has gone down, and it's gone down for both because we lost a tenant. We also, if you look at the numbers in the I think it's on page 20 and 21, you'll see how the bar center worked. And you'll see that after 2019, we removed, there was historically a transfer from operations. There was a $628,000 transfer. That was rent we were paying to ourselves, which is kind of a fiction because then it just ends up in reserves and we then run a negative budget and it kind of rolls. So that came out, but it impacts like the reduction in what the bar center. So when you look at that and you're like, wow, the bar center went down from throwing off, $1.5 million to only throwing off $500,000. Part of that is we stopped paying ourselves, but part of it is we lost a tenant. We're still net positive on the rent. We're just less net positive on the rent. And then the third thing is ICLE, and Damon talked a little bit about this. ICLE has been throwing off money that has been helpful to all of us to keep bar dues down. But it's become, as I understand, a little more, we're just not sure what the future is going to bring. And part of that is because the Supreme Court made a change so that we can all do virtual. And so the committee is figuring out like what that's going to look like. So we didn't know that we could say, oh, the past 3 years we've been making X, so we expect to make X in the future. We don't know what X is going to be. It might be that much, it might be less. So there were a couple things in there where we were unsure of what the revenue was going to be. So we felt like we need to potentially be more conservative for those reasons. And finally, we looked at the reserves. There's a big reserve built up, as you know. And some of that reserve is a dedicated reserve, and some of that is just an extra reserve. And there's been sort of this ongoing, over the past, it started and it's ongoing through this year, an analysis of what the reserves are and what they should be with the building that we have and the changes in revenue, and are there things that need to happen? So all of that is kind of happening behind the scenes. And, we could have no dues increase and dig into the reserves. But to make sure that we continue to have flexibility, it felt like not digging into them as much as we could might also be prudent. So we looked at all of those things. We looked at scenarios between a $0 dues increase, the same as we have the past few years, or a $10 dues increase, and then every increment in between. And we ended up recommending the $6 dues increase, in part because it was a middle ground. It was a conservative place. There is a $500,000 increase that's happening this year, or even more than a $500,000 increase. And if you don't do dues increases, it exacerbates over time. Like you will eventually have to make it up. But we did feel that the bar is in a really good fiscal situation. And it just seemed that $6 was a prudent path among many paths that were possible to recommend to the executive committee.
Thank you, Elena. At this time, we can either do a motion or let people discuss. If there's any immediate questions that anyone would like to ask, happy to take those, or we can also open the floor for a motion. And what I'm going to do, just to make life somewhat more manageable, is I'm going to try to take a question from the room, and then I've got to look over here and figure out if somebody's online who wants to speak. So we're just going to try to alternate. But at this point, I'll entertain a motion on the dues, and then we can obviously have discussion at that point. I got a motion to approve and a second from the floor. All right, any discussion? And it's a motion to approve the dues recommendation as presented in the board book. Thank you, John. Any discussion, any questions? There he is. Judge Valbuena.
I was letting somebody else go first, since it always seems I stand up as the naysayer and go first. So
but I appreciate it. And you're succinct too, so get it.
I was trying not to do that, but no one else was going, so I'm up. Okay. I sit on finance and I voted for no dues increase. I understand what Elena was saying, and I think some of that makes sense. I sit on programs, and she's right. I'm the chairperson of programs. There was very little that impacts the budget overall. I completely agree with her there. I sit on the EC, and I also voted for no increase. I may have been the only one on the EC that didn't vote for the increase. I don't remember that exact vote, but I want to talk about why. We didn't talk about yet today the idea that we need to deal with our reserve or surplus funds or extra money. I'm going to call it extra money because Ron doesn't say I can't call it that, like he says he can't call it these other things. If you look on page 31 of your board book, I think this is one of the best charts that we get every time in the board book. It kind of does our summary of where everything stands. Use of cash, about 5 or 6 lines down, says board designated, and there's about just under $9 million of board designated reserves that come out of the equation. That includes $2.75 million. If you turn to the next page, excuse me, maybe, yeah, the next page, on page 32, you see that there's $2.75 million board designated reserve for general operations of the bar and $2 million of general of reserve, board designated reserve for the bar center. We voted several years ago at some point, we realized we need to have some sort of reserve when we started talking about that whole discussion of we have all this extra money and we're going to do this slow burn down, but we can't burn down to zero. We need to put some money aside for a reserve. We voted, and those were the numbers we picked. At the time we picked them, they just sounded like good numbers. We didn't have no study had been done that said this is the advice you need to do for this. Or I think we did do one that used a lot higher numbers. We weren't comfortable with that. We picked those numbers, and that's what we've had as reserves for a number of years now. So when you go back to page 31, I want to make it clear. You see that those numbers are subtracted out. We start out with $32.5 million as cash and investments. You subtract out all the different things you see there, including the 2 things I just pointed out, the money for sections, the money for payment of credit card bills, the money for finishing out the bar year. And at the end, you get to that line that says estimated cash and investments, June 30th, 2022 for the bar, $6,436,113. That's what I call extra money. It's not earmarked for anything. It's not pledged to anything. It's just extra money. If we increase the bar dues, like Elena's suggesting, then we don't eat into any of that extra money. The question I keep coming back to is why are we keeping all of that extra money? We talked about for years, we're going to burn that down, burn that down, burn that down. We've never done it. You know why? Because we set the budget and every year we come in under budget. So we say, yeah, we're going to negative budget this year and use up some of that money. And then when we get to the end of the year, because the bar staff does an amazing job, because the CFO does an amazing job, we come in under budget every year and we don't eat up any of that money. We just add to it. It goes up a couple $100,000 here, a couple $100,000 there, and it just keeps growing. It's not going down at all. It's extra money. Now, I don't see why we have $6.5 million of extra money that we're not using for anything, is not earmarked for anything. It's not part of any restriction we have whatsoever at all. It's just money that we have extra. I think we shouldn't increase dues. I think we should eat into that. Okay, now here's the issue I have. What we discussed in finance and we discussed in the EC, and I recognize, is we maybe need a more thoughtful reserve policy. The numbers we've picked might not be accurate. We may need more than $2.75 million for the bar center or bar operations. We may need more than $2 million, but we don't have any real intelligent analysis of what those numbers should be yet. And I think we need to do that. We've discussed it at different times. I think it's time to spend the money with some consultants that say, hey, here's what you need to have as real reserves that would be the smart, prudent, best practices, whatever word you want to use, thing to do for that. And until we do that, I think that $6.5 million is extra money. And I don't think it's fair to raise dues $10. I don't think it's fair to raise dues $6. I don't think it's fair to raise dues $1 when we have that much extra money that theoretically we're really not supposed to keep. We're not a for-profit business that we're looking to make all that money. And as a licensed bar member, you get some profits at the end. We're not supposed to have a profit. We're supposed to equal out and kind of be good stewards, as we always say. And I think at some point, we're not burning that down. We need to come up with a better plan. And I think raises are excellent. That's a good way to increase the budget, use up some of that, because our staff is phenomenal and we haven't given them a raise. And at this point, we are losing staff people, I believe, because of money. We're losing some good people that are going somewhere else for more money. It's a great place to work, but at a certain point, you got to take care of your family, and the money differences is mattering. So we need to do the raises. But even doing the raises, as Elena said, and adding that $500,000 with the new person and all, it doesn't impact that $6.5 million that much. I don't think we have the chart in here that we got in finance, but if we don't raise dues, Elena can correct me, I think it's about $325,000 of the $6.5 million we'd have to eat into. So it's less than 5% of our extra money we'd use this year. And what I'm saying is, I think between this year and next year, we need to have that study done so that we know what the reserve should be. There's been discussion at times that we need 6 months reserve. Well, that's the number that a lot of personal financial advisors tell you should have in your personal family. But I understand that. And maybe that's a good number for us, but I don't think it is, because in your personal family, you could lose your job and be unemployed for 6 months and have no income for 6 months. So having that kind of reserve would be helpful in that situation. You could get disabled, not have disability insurance, and need to come up with a new plan. Something could happen. In your personal life, that can happen. In a small business situation, that can happen. In your law firm, something big can happen where you have a big impact like that. I don't see the disaster that could hit the bar that would require it. If you look also on page 18, you see what our total bar expenses are for the last several years. They run somewhere between 14 million in the COVID year up to 18.5 million the year before, or 2 years before COVID. Somewhere between 16 and $18 million is generally our expenses. So you're talking about 6 months, we need somewhere between $8 to $9 million of a reserve. Well, if that's what we need, we only have 2.75. You take the 6.5 that we have extra money, put them together, and you've got your $8, $9 million. Okay. If that's the right thing to do, I'm all for that. The problem is I don't see the natural disaster or man-made disaster or what could impact the State Bar of Georgia that we would not get dues, which is our overwhelmingly biggest source of revenue, from 50% of the lawyers for an entire year. Katrina could come through the state of Georgia. It's not going to impact the entire state of Georgia. A tornado could come through Atlanta and tear up all of downtown Atlanta. It's not going to impact Midtown and Buckhead too. It's not going to impact the rest of the state. A pandemic could happen and cause the country and the state to shut down for several months, but it's not going to shut down for an entire year, and you're not going to lose 50% of your lawyers paying dues. That's what we're talking about, is that in one bar year or something like, we would lose 50% of our income, and that's why we need $8 or $9 million. I've thought about it and thought about it. There was the idea that we could get hit with some sort of ransomware that would shut the state bar down. That could happen too, or it could shut our bank down. But we're diversified. We don't have all the money in one bank. I don't believe. And so I don't see that we have the right reserve set, but I also don't see that we've ever been given the advice and instruction to set that. And so until we do that, which I think should happen this next year, until we do that, I don't see why we're raising dues and not using up $6.5 million of extra money. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I believe that Judge Cannon has his virtual hand raised and would like to speak.
Good morning. I was in Athens yesterday with my daughter looking at law school, but had to bring her back because she's heading back to college today. Let me try to move this light out of the way a little bit. Anyway, so I had to come home. I echo the sentiments of my right honorable friend, Judge Valbuena. I have been on this board for almost 20 years now. I am now on my second stint on the Finance Committee. I have only made one Finance Committee meeting because I've been on the bench every other day. We've had Finance meeting, but I was at the last one. Unfortunately, Martin wasn't there, but I missed the one where we actually voted on the bar dues increase. So I did not vote for or against the bar dues increase. I might would have voted for it at the Finance Committee meeting based upon my duties as a Finance Committee member. I've explained to them that the members of the committee, that I will treat that position based upon the what I believe the intention of the committee are, and voice my opinions as far as total bar finances, if we should approve the bar dues increase or not at this meeting. The Finance Committee's recommendation is based upon an expectation of a deficit in the current bar year budget, but not, as Judge Valbuena has indicated, looking at the total reserves, surplus, cash, money on hand, money that we have collected from our members over the years, and still continue to hold without any reason to hold it or any use for it. It's just sitting in our account, gaining a woeful 0.02% interest. Despite the efforts over the years to continue to spend down this surplus, we have never done it, ever. It has, in most years, continues to grow. We have done that during a pandemic, despite less revenue coming in from the bar building, no parking, all these doom and gloom scenarios kind of played out, and we still are going to have a significant surplus, and the budget deficit is, I think, what, $50,000 or so? We have added lawyers every year, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 lawyers every year, all paying $250 a year in bar dues. Over the years, we continue to have a surplus. This is despite my efforts to continue to get y'all to spend less money and cut fees. We have started to prorate fees for new lawyers. Finally, we did that, 4 or 5 years ago, instead of charging them full amounts. And still, we have a surplus. We got rid of the building fee, which is a significant amount of money. And we still have a surplus. We have come out of this pandemic in good shape. When the pandemic is over and people start coming downtown and gathering and the parking deck starts to be full again, we're going to have more money coming in. We are increasing dues this year by a significant amount based upon the client security fund issue. I don't see a reason to continue to increase it over and above that. Maybe the thought is, well, we'll just slip it in and no one will complain about the $6 increase because we're getting hit with a big increase on the other side. We have the ability to tax as needed. I have said this 20 times every year we talk about the budget. We can tax as needed. If there's an actual deficit or actual negative cash flow, we can increase bar dues anytime, any year to get it back up to where it needs to be. We have set aside reserves. Even if we burn through the surplus cash, we have set aside reserves that if in the event we need extra money, we can dip into those, and then we can increase bar dues up to that level, just like we can for this client security fund issue. The surplus that we currently have will cover the slight budget deficit. Our state bar staff and everyone, just as Martin said, one thing I have noticed in reviewing this, we come in under budget every year. I love that. We do not have a use it or lose it mentality. We don't burn through money because we have it budgeted, it's in our account. Our managers and our financial folks should be commended for that attitude, because that's not what we see in, government. So I'm not complaining about that. I understand the reasons why Ron has the position that he has, one of the finance commissions that have the position they have. But I've been preaching this story for years. I finally have another couple of folks on my island of misfit toys that agree with me. If you read the financials and dig into it and say, well, we have, $2 million of surplus cash sitting around. What are we supposed to be doing with that? What should we be doing? Why do we the question is, why do we have it? We don't need it. It should be in our members' pockets, not in our pockets. And when we need money, I'm the last person to agree to a bar dues increase for any reason. But if there is a need, I'm for it. If there is a program that benefits the majority of the lawyers in the state bar, I don't have a problem with that. But there is no reason under any scenario why we should continue to increase bar dues while we are sitting on surplus cash. If the government were doing that, you'd be mad about it. We can always raise dues next year if we run through our surplus cash, or the year after that, or the year after that. Or if and when we finally burn through the surplus cash, we can raise bar dues. But there is no reason to do it until we get to that point, because we haven't gotten to it yet in the 20 years that I've been on this board. So I recommend to everyone to vote against the bar dues increase. It will cause extra effort on the bar dues staff and more work on us in the finance committee to rework the numbers and present them back to the board and all that stuff. So inertia also wants us to keep the bar dues increased, because we've already agreed to it from the finance committee, and all the financials that are done and everything that's set up, and the dues notice may have already been printed. I think we've had that argument before. I don't care. We should not increase dues if we don't need the money, and we don't need the money. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Judge Cannon. Elena?
Yeah, so I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't get a vote. I have been on the finance committee for about 20 years. And so there were just a couple of things that came up that triggered that there might be more information that would be useful to you. One of the things is the reserve fund. There is excess cash of $6 million. One of the things we noticed in the budget, in the dues meeting, was that there had been an increase in it, and we're trying to figure out why. So just as background, the reserves have been, or the excess cash has been built up because historically we've made more money off of the bar center than we've spent on the bar center. So there's been all this money coming from the bar center. And as I mentioned before, we lost rent from ourselves and we lost rent from another tenant. So that increase is going to be going down. A few years ago, we ended up merging with ICLE, and they got integrated into our budget over time. And then their reserve funds were integrated. So I don't know if you know off the top of your head, I'm kind of remembering 1.3 million. I don't know. It was definitely a 7-figure increase that came from the ICLE reserve. So part of the reason it's where it is today is that a year ago when we looked at it, there was this ICLE reserve that wasn't in our budget. And now the ICLE reserve is in our budget, and it's money that we have that I don't know that ICLE needs a reserve at this point. So I'm just saying that as background about how the money came, how the money appeared in that excess cash. The second thing is how the reserve was set. So it was after Katrina, where we all got freaked out and we're like, oh gosh, we need to figure out what we need to have. And we did have people come and talk to us about what would be appropriate. And for a lot of nonprofit organizations, what they recommend is 12 months. But that seemed excessive because we have a taxing right? We, people have to pay money every year to be a member of the bar and practice. So that didn't make sense. So on the operations side, we set it at 3 months. So that started out at that point, the bar budget was about $8 million and we set it at 3 months. So it was $2 million reserve on the operations side. And that was if something happens and money doesn't come in on time and we need to pay people's salary for 3 months, we will have 3 months. So that's where part of it came from originally. And then on the bar building side, so we had this big building and it might need things, we had a tornado go past the building, as you may recall. What if something happened to the roof? It's not like a tree is going to fall on it because aren't trees there that big, but what if something happened and we had to pay the deductible on our insurance or whatever? So we, at that point, I think there was some, talking to Cushman Wakefield and some analysis, but that was set at 2 million also. It was just an easy, these are the same things. And then several years later, there was a realization that, wow, we no longer have an $8 million annual budget. If we really think it's 3 months, it needs to be more because our budget has gotten bigger. And so that's when it got changed to 2.75 million on the operations side. So that's how we got to the total 4.75 million in dedicated reserves. I do completely agree. And my understanding is that there is a reach out and talking that is happening that will come back to probably us and you all at some point in the next year about what makes sense. And it's all up for debate, right? Like, should it be 3 months or should it be 1 month, or what should it be on the operations side? And then on the building side, I think that analysis is more of a granular analysis of, we have this building and when does the roof need to be replaced? And when do these systems what needs to happen there? The building is over 100 years old, right? So obviously things have been replaced over time, but all that needs to be analyzed. I do agree that we probably don't need all of it. We probably could dig into it this year. The other thing that, I don't know if we expressly talked about it, I know I thought about it, is the fact that, we haven't had a salary increase for a couple years. We're gonna presumably have a salary increase this year. But then presumably we're going to have a salary increase in the next year and the next year and the next year. And it might not be as big a salary increase. I mean, it'll fluctuate over time as to what it is, but we're at a point in our budget, like we took the rent out of the budget, right? So we're at a point where we're at a very skinny budget on the operations side. And so, I said to you at the beginning that when we kind of indexed the additional cost from this year, it was an additional cost of $10 dues impact. Well, so next year, there's going to be another additional cost because that's going to be the 1% or 2% or 3% or whatever the raise is across the board. And that'll happen the following year and the following year and the following year. And I'm not saying that you have to, we're not going to go bankrupt. That's not what's happening here. But there'll be another incremental increase each year. So if you did a $6 increase this year, I suspect that we're then going to be talking about another $4 to $6 increase the year after. Maybe not. I mean, it may be that we get another tenant in the building, or everybody really wants to do virtual CLE with ICLE, and we don't lose people to the national, vendors on CLE. So it's a tenuous place. And I'm not saying you have to do a $6 dues increase. I don't have a vote. I don't have a dog in this fight. I think you have a lot of room to move on this, but do know that it's just going to be a larger dues increase the following year, because eventually we're going to do something with this other money. It will come back, is my point. So that's all background, and I will turn it back over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elena. And I believe that Henry Walker has his virtual hand raised.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I've been on the board 25 plus years, and I think I voted for a lot of dues increase. I'm inclined to defer to the wisdom of the Finance Committee and the EC and vote for this one as well. But throughout this whole time, the reserve issue has come up time and time again, and I'm certainly not in a position where I could articulate to my constituents or partners or whoever exactly what the State Bar Reserve policy is and why we're raising dues if we have $6.8 million in extra money or whatever the exact term is. I do think we need to carefully study what the reserve policy is, have it in writing, and have it approved by this board. Particularly if you're, as we're talking about, having additional dues increase, larger dues increases down the road. I don't think we should just default to holding on to this money out of some, without some sort of best practices study and rationale as to why we're doing it. It's our members' money, and we're asking for even more money now. So again, I mean, I'm inclined to support this just out of the support of the wisdom of the smart people that have recommended it, but this is a question that comes up time and time again, and I don't feel, at least, that we have a real good answer for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Jack?
Yeah, Jack Long from what remains of the Augusta Judicial Circuit. Listen, I just wanted to say, I'm very sensitive to increase in dues for members. I usually vote against those things. This is a $6 increase. If we look at it, relative to what inflation is today, it's half of that. This is always an issue every year because no bar president wants to be the one to make a $20 hike. In looking at it, I just checked what my South Carolina bar dues are where I'm also registered for a bar that doesn't own a building, doesn't allow members to reserve space in a building, has one meeting a year in Charleston rather than 4 big Board of Governors meetings, doesn't provide as much programming, and it's $375. Georgia is consistently one of the best value states in the nation for what we pay in bar dues for what our members are receiving. This is a $6 increase. While I'm certainly sensitive to any money we are forcing our members to pay to have the privilege of practicing law, I would defer to the wisdom of the Finance Committee. They spent ample time discussing this. Certainly the reserve issue is one we need to study and continue to talk about. But I think through the years, been lots of potential needs that could come up for that money. One of the things that came up several years ago, I don't know if it's still an issue, is parking. One reason we've not been able to fully utilize our space and command the revenues that we could out of our bar center is our parking deck is not big enough to fully lease the entire space. At one point, there was some discussion about acquiring more parking space in the downtown area. And that was one reason that we had sort of started to build up reserves. Another reason might have been potential damage to the building. In this climate, there's a lot of fear about, cyber warfare and what were to happen if, we would be the subject of that. I think it's always a good idea to have something in backup. Certainly that's an issue that commands more study, but a $6 increase is not, it's just not earth shattering given the rate of inflation and the expenses the bar have. So I'll be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And I do want to say about the reserve policy, that is something that we have talked about all year, and about the appropriate vendors and who we need to go to. Is it the auditors? Is it whomever? So that issue is top of mind for everyone. And hopefully by the time she's having to do this next year, we will have something more concrete to discuss. But I do want you to know that everyone is being heard loud and clear on that front too. And no one wants just wants to sit on extra cash for the sake of sitting on extra cash. Thomas?
Well, I think you just addressed my question on what's the timeline for presenting a reserve policy to the board to
Probably next year.
I would imagine, just given what they've got to go through and the way the finance committee works, but everyone realizes it is top of mind. And I know for one, I wouldn't want to have this discussion again next year and then have y'all say, and remember when we talked about this last year in Athens?
Thanks for the setup.
Yep, you got it. I got you though. I can help. All right, do we have any other comments or questions in the auditorium? Conference room? What is this? Ballroom? I hear that, but okay. We've got a motion on the table to raise dues to 260 for active dues, 130 for inactive dues. You ready to put the slide up? If the session shows that it's been closed, you can join it again, and we will take time for everyone to do this, so do not panic. What you looking at? All right, we're going to give it just a few more seconds, and then we'll close the poll. All right, we're going to close the poll in 5 seconds. We're going to give it a little bit more time, I was just told. Let's sing a song now. Yeah. If you are having an issue voting, for some of you online, if you're having issue voting, try shutting down the software and re-logging back in on the session. It forced me to do that for this particular vote. So
Don't do that.
don't do
Yeah. And your president explains that. I heard her. Would you want I'm going to spend the next 3 hours of this meeting. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Okay, so for those that are voting, that are online, that are having a hard time with the software, if it's not cooperating, please vote in the Q&A and we will add that to the tally. So please do that now. It's all gonna be okay. Got 108.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna close the poll. And then folks are voting in the Q&A, and we're gonna do some tallying. None. Brilliant. We're doing some figuring. Okay. So the motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Elena, for reminding us of 20 years worth of Finance Committee work. All right, next on the agenda, we now have to vote on other Bardu statement items. So basically, we are just voting to allow these things to have real estate on our due statement. We're not voting on the amounts. Those amounts are set forth in your board book. So it's section dues between $10 and $40, assessments required by bar rules. So it's client security fund in the amount of $15, professionalism fee, $11. And then we've got the other contributions for the legislative fund and GLSP. Do I have a motion to approve those other dues items? I got a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? And what we do for this particular vote is we vote on it as a slate. All right, you can launch. Where are we at on our numbers? All right, we're going to give it a little bit longer to let those votes come through. We're going to close the poll in 5 seconds. Our secretary's counting down. He got it. There you go. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we are going to, before we call Christine up, about one more item that we've got a PowerPoint to show y'all. We've been talking a lot about the programs and the things that the bar offers and what our bar dues goes towards. And so we wanted to show you one of those things. You know, this year I talked about having something called Know Your Bar, just to help everyone know sort of the offerings that the bar has, because we do have a lot. And what I wanted to talk to everyone about just briefly is the Find a Lawyer feature that we have. Oh yeah, there you go. Hashtag Know Your Bar. All right, you can go to the next slide. Again, Find a Lawyer, next slide. Okay, so Find a Lawyer, if you go to the State Bar's website and you look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see sort of a magnifying glass that says Find a Lawyer. And, you know, we're accustomed to using the bar's website as a directory. You know, I need to go look up Elena Kaplan's info. I don't know where she is. I can type that in. That block is really directed for the public. So if they're really trying to look for a lawyer. So remember some odd years ago when Pat O'Connor was president of the bar, we started something called Cloud Law or Zeke Beak. I don't know. It's gone through a couple names. Now it's called Rely a Guide. And it's basically a way for the public to be able to come in, look for a lawyer by a practice group or practice area. And if you can go to the next slide. So complimentary or with your bar dues, you actually get a free, you get a lawyer basic profile, which means your contact information, you can upload a headshot if you'd like to, some jazzy title a la LinkedIn. And you can list the 3 practice areas and it'll give your education history and all that stuff's populated with, it's the exception of the title and the headshot. Everything else is populated with information that you already supply the bar. So you're already in this directory. But you can go and add these practice areas on what you would like to do. So this is complimentary. This is something you have access to. So for those of you who would like to get yourself out there more and advertise for clients or have people be able to find you more easily, this is a great way to do it. You go to the next slide.
So of course, like everything though, we've got something that's complimentary, then we've got something that you can actually buy if you would like, and you can upgrade, and it's $8 a month. And with that, you can really make sort of a fulsome web profile. It can almost be akin to a website for you, especially if you're a small or solo firm. And so just wanted to let you know this exists. You can do or not do, but it is already out there to some extent for you already. But if you'd like to go in and add your headshot or things like that, I hope you'll consider using it because it is a great program that we offer. Go to the next slide. With the added profile or the profile plus, you can get some analytics and things like that. So you can see how many people really want to see you. But again, that is the paid portion. You do not have to do that. You do have a different option available to you. And if you go to the next slide. And that's who you need to call or reach out to at the bar. Again, it's a member benefit, and we just wanted you to know that it exists if it fits in your practice area and space. It does allow people to come in and search for lawyers by areas, by not only practice areas, but geographic location. And then again, the contact internally. And then there you go. Just wanted you to know that's one of the many great things that your bar offers you. With that, I'll call Christine forward to give our legislative update. And the fact that she's here makes me feel comfortable that the session could end on Monday.
Good morning, everyone. I thought I would start my report by having Sally and I lead everyone in Gator cheers, but then I realized that hairy dog character that was here last night might come out and slap me like Will Smith at the Oscars, so we're not going to do that. I'm going to be brief. So yesterday was day 39 down at the legislature, and Monday is day 40. And so it's a very, very busy time at the Capitol, the witching hour, as a lot of people call it, because things get tacked on to bills and everything is moving very rapidly. In terms of the legislation that this board approved and the proposals that y'all have approved from this legislative cycle, I wanted to give you an update there. The Advanced Psychiatric Directive legislation has gone over very, very well and has been very, very well received at the legislature. It was a big project that the fiduciary section has worked on, and it has actually been about 15 years in the making, and it has passed in both houses, and they're waiting on an agree vote there. The Superior and State Court Appellate Practice Act, which is House Bill 916, which is also a bill of the Judicial Councils, has passed in the House and is on the Senate rules calendar. We were hoping to see it be called up yesterday, but it looks like hopefully they're going to get to it on Monday. And then remote online notary, which is an issue that the bar has been looking at and for several years now. It's in a conference committee right now, and it looks like that conference committee may not reach an agreement. There's a lot of tension, as many of you may know, with real estate closings and how remote online notary would work in that arena. But the governor's executive order has been online since the beginning of the pandemic, will end in mid-April. And so we were hoping to see some legislation go through to codify all of that, but it looks like it may not end up happening. So I will keep everyone abreast in my final legislative update that will go out after day 40, and hopefully everything ends smoothly after Monday. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks for all the hard work that you and everyone else has been doing at the Capitol. All right, I'd like to read aloud the written reports found on pages 52 to 77 board book. No, but you should check those out, and it's a lot of great information, and people take a lot of time to prepare those, so I commend those to you. It's fantastic. We're doing really well on time. So any old business? Would you like to go? What here? How about we'll do new business, please? If I may.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Joyce Gist-Lewis. I'm a member of the Board of Governors. I'm also a longtime member of the Attorney Wellness Committee. And I hope some brave souls were able to get up and muster the fortitude to participate in the morning yoga that was offered at 7 a.m. or the yoga session that's immediately following this. I'm up here and I'm not going to take a lot of time. I've already talked to many of you in this room, but we are in the process of applying for the formation of an attorney well-being section of the bar. The attorney well-being section, we hope, will connect attorney well-being to competency and performance, create programming and resources that place attorney well-being as a critical component to improve the administration of justice from both the bench and the bar. You have heard this morning, you have heard our president talk about the importance of mental health wellness for lawyers. You have heard our YLD president talk about the support that the younger lawyers need in this. This is just, it's critical. It's critical. I know you've all heard the statistics. We lead the professions in suicides. We lead the professions in alcoholism. And it is so important that we as a bar have the ability to support our members and keep our members healthy and safe. So we have already gathered, thanks to many of the people in this room, sufficient signatures to submit the application for the formation of the section. I have extra copies of the application and the proposed bylaws. If anybody would like to take a look, or you can send me your card and I'm happy to email you a copy, but we will be asking for the board's support for the formation of this section at the annual meeting. So thank you so much, and please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, any other new business? Any announcements? Mr. Spencer.
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do next.
You're up.
You're up.
Good morning. I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that our board member, Chris Twyman, has been will be inducted into the American College of Trial Lawyers in Rome, Italy later this year. On behalf of the college, I wanted to welcome Chris and congratulate him publicly.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Also have an announcement that the past president's lunch is at 12:30 in the Oconee River Room in the Foundry building. And with that, having completed the business of the agenda, this meeting is adjourned.